Today I am joined with the powerhouses leading two iconic brands in our industry. You don't want to miss it. This is the Safety Wire Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Safety Wire Podcast. My name is Tim Wade, and I'm your host. I am joined here by two industry leaders, Bryan Burns, President and CEO of the Air Charter Safety Foundation, or better known as ACSF. He has an extensive history in aviation, such as being the GM of Signature Flight Support at both Dulles and Ronald Reagan airports. And during his tenure at Reagan, he was rated the #1 FBO in the nation for 4 consecutive years. John Brogan is the president and CEO of USAIG, the United States Aircraft Insurance Group. He's been with USAIG since 1997 and has an impressive background in aviation with involvement in multiple boards such as Aviation Insurance Associations, Eagle Society, and he also sits on the board of governors for the Wings Club. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thanks, Tim, for having us.
Thanks, Tim.
No, not a problem, not a problem. So I'd like to go a little back and forth with you two, since you have both extensive different backgrounds, but they feed into each other in a very unique way. And I love what you guys both bring to the table. This is the first time I've ever had a president and CEO, let alone two at the exact same time. So this is outstanding. I think our listeners are going to get some great information for this one. Bryan, I'm going to throw a question to you first. So ACSF has a great view of safety in our industry. You know, so you guys... And I know this as well, being in safety, we see the worst of the worst sometimes. We only see the hazards and the incidents coming through. Viewing it from safety, what causal factors are you seeing with accidents and incidents today that you're seeing come through with ACSF?
Well, Tim, first of all, thank you again for having me on your show. So what we're discovering basically comes down to the fact that it falls into a handful of categories of these causal factors, right? So I'll kind of go through a list of what we have discovered in recent years, and the trend is pretty consistent. The fact that human error seems to be the front runner, and that typically falls in the category of poor judgment, decision making, which is very broad, but at the same time, it's typically linked to behavior. And what we're seeing from contributing factors is such things as procedural drift, complacency, automation, technology factoring into that, things like lack of attention to detail, avoiding distractions, crew monitoring and cross-checking when there's obviously two pilots in the cockpit. And at the end of the day, there's some things that are tied into lack of professionalism, right? So we always talk about doing the right thing when nobody is looking. So I kind of link all that together as a mindset. It's really for, when it comes to managing and mitigating risk. So that's what we're seeing, the trends and the patterns.
Wow, a lot of patterns out there and a lot of different specific risks. John, once one of the main roles of an insurance company, especially sustaining your own organization, is looking for risk, which, as Bryan just pointed out, risk can be found anywhere and everywhere, especially on the hangar floor or in the cockpit. So how does USAIG vet risk when you guys are underwriting a policy?
So first and foremost, there's set applications and information that we get submitted from someone who's looking for insurance, and that's looking at a risk on paper, right? So you're looking at what type of aircraft, the make and model, and the year, and the value, and then you're looking at pilot information, and there's a lot you can tell from that. That's all. That's the pedigree information that you need. But the most valuable thing that we do to vet risk is to visit our customers and visit them to actually look under the hood, meet the people who are living the culture of that organization, to see that what they have written down on paper is actually put into action. And I think that's the most vital step of what we do in the underwriting process, is being boots on the ground with the operators to understand who they are, what they do, and how they do it. Look them in the eye and see that what they've written down on that paper, they're actually living. So it's extremely important for our company, and I think all of our competitors, to have the resources to be able to do that, right? So in order to get out and visit all of our customers, it takes a tremendous amount of resources, time, energy, money. So we need to make sure that we have those resources to do that and properly vet risk, because looking at it just purely on paper doesn't always tell us the full story. We need to get face to face with the customers.
I love that. I tell our safety managers all the time, you cannot properly audit from behind a desk. You cannot vet risk solely from incidents and hazards coming through the system. You got to get out there and actually talk face to face, see the hangar floor, feel the aircraft, see what's actually going on around there. So that's our target audience when it comes to safety and audits. But Bryan, you guys have a great program called Pathway to Safety. I've been reading up on that all week, actually. So who's your target audience with this program? It's a very robust program that you guys are running.
Yeah, so what we're really focused on, Tim, is the small to medium-sized operator, who typically lack three things in our view, and that is time, money, and resources. And where the Air Charter Safety Foundation kind of falls into is that we're trying to fill that gap as a facilitator to really help them through that process. And it's all about enhancing and improving from operations that don't know where to begin to ones that have kind of started it, some type of safety program, but don't know where to go from there. So, when we talk to these companies, the first thing we try to find out is their company culture, and really determine where it all starts and whether you truly have the employee buy-in, because the success of any safety program is, whether it's the crews, whether it's the mechanics, whether it's the dispatchers, the entire staff needs to be engaged in that process, right? So these small operators, we try to get that established in the early stages. And most importantly, it's the leaders. And what we refer to occasionally as the C-suites, right? And do they get it? Do they understand it? Do they see the value with that? And so we talk about core value all the time, right? As part of, safety, as opposed to its priority, or, it's our number one goal. Core value is key, because that doesn't change. And the other thing, so when it came to the programs you just kind of mentioned, we look at that pathway to safety kind of as a continuous improvement process, right? So it all starts with just culture. And that's a collaborative effort internally that's got some high reliability if done properly, right? So that's all about non-punitive versus, it's all about improvement versus punishment. And that's where it all kind of starts in the beginning. And then you layer on SMS. We'll talk probably a little bit more about that. That we offer just a simple, low cost, customizable kind of platform. Now with the FAA rulemaking announced, we all know that one size doesn't fit all. And we're focused on that scalable, flexible, as it relates to, complying with Part 5, which is really the essence of, obviously, the SMS ruling. And then we layer on our industry audit standard. Our industry audit standard is, already has Part 5 embedded in the standard. And that's been that way for the last 14 years. Our standard, when we first introduced it, was very SMS centric. And a lot of folks, when they tried to go through the audit, found it very challenging for that reason. But we already got the jump start on that, is my point. And the other programs that we introduced is the ACSF program, which by far is our front runner. The Aviation Safety Action Program, it's been a wonderful partnership with the FAA. They understand it, they get it under their new compliance philosophy. And what we're discovering, we've got 276 companies participating and growing, but we've found out that, a lot of these reports that were coming in would have never been disclosed, much less discovered, if they weren't enrolled in the ACSF program. So the data and the feedback has been phenomenal, right? And so we take that information, we de-identify it, we aggregate it, and we share it. So it's all about lessons learned. And then we're working on a flight data monitoring program. We all, I always say about flight data monitoring, FDM tells you what happened, ASAP tells you why it happened. So they complement each other. And that's a wonderful tool. And our last one we've got, we're introducing here is our member assistance program. So that's all about coaching. That's all about mentoring. It's all about, at a low cost. So folks that just don't know where to begin, where to start, it's designed to get them that first step into where we are, where do we need to go. So this is a process. I mean, I don't expect a lot of our new smaller companies to, pile on all these initiatives and safety programs right away. But like anything, they work their way through that. And we can help, support that. That's all. So that's where we're at in our program.
That's wonderful. I love your viewpoint on data gathering and bringing in the information for the ASAP program, because I've always said if you don't have an accessible means to reporting and you don't have great protections for those submitting that vulnerable information, you're not going to get quality data coming in. You will still receive the reports that you can't sweep under the rug. The oops, I burned down the hangar, or I completely totaled an aircraft. You can't get away with those. However, those minor reports that build up your solid reporting culture, if you can't easily access your reporting and you don't feel safe doing so, you'll never receive those reports. So that is an outstanding point of view for the Pathway to Safety. I love the programs you guys are doing. John, how does implementing a program such as the Pathway to Safety influence not only the ability to be insured, but does it affect the premiums as well?
It certainly does influence the ability to be insured and can affect the premiums. But I guess I'll take it a step back to just talk about the insurance business as a whole, and this applies to aviation as well as all other forms of insurance. A lot of us in aviation talk about how the one incident or accident affects all of us, right? So someone who maybe isn't doing something the right way, or maybe have an unfortunate incident, and it reflects on the entire aviation community. I'll get a little more scientific than that. Insurance-wise, the insurance industry, the aviation insurance industry works by, we need to pay for all of the losses that happen in the aviation world. And then there is a cost on top of that number for the insurance companies to stay in business, pay salaries, keep the lights on. So in general, premiums are generated by all of the losses that the industry has. And then a little cost factor on top of that, which the insurance companies compete with each other and keep that number down. So every loss that does happen truly does affect everyone in the industry. So programs like what the Pathway to Safety and others out there that are bringing the safety level up will help bring overall losses down. So when overall losses go down, obviously that shrinks the pile of losses that everybody needs to pay for, and that can have an overall effect on premiums. It's very hard in aviation. We don't have the luxury of what's called the law of large numbers. So if you're doing auto insurance, you've got hundreds of millions of cars, and you can get statistics down to a color of a car and an age of a driver, and pinpoint exactly how many losses that individual is likely to have. In aviation, we don't have that. We don't have so many similar exposures. Almost every exposure is pretty unique. So associating a singular program with a specific discount, we just don't have data to support any one program generating a very specific number of reduction in losses. But overall, as we see more and more people participate in these programs, and SMS and FDM are at the top of the pile that we see having an overall effect, that will allow us as an industry to help keep premiums under control. Otherwise, they'll still, we have to be affected by inflation, regular inflation, cost of parts, cost of labor, and social inflation. That's the cost of litigation, the fact that lawsuits keep increasing in settlement and judgment sizes. So those are factors that are affecting the overall loss pile and increasing premiums. But if we can help reduce that by bringing in reducing the number of occurrences, that will help the overall picture. And that's why we'd encourage and look favorably upon anyone who participated in a program like Bryan is talking about, or there are other programs out there as well, but the programs Bryan has are fantastic, and I think most any underwriter would look favorably upon that.
And that makes sense how you said, we don't have the numbers that, say, the automotive industry has to base insurance rates off of and discounts and things like that. But that goes back to your point of how important it is to actually get out on the hangar floor, understand your customers, understand what's going on in the industry so you can make these educated guesses or educated, informed decisions. Sorry, not guesses. Bryan, you've been a leading voice with incident education and learning from our past. Over the time that you've been in aviation, are you seeing any cultural shifts that show that we're actually learning from where we have been years ago?
So it kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and I referenced leadership and owners and getting their attention relative to investing in safety, right? And so what I always talk about is demonstrate to me that there is a return on your investment when you invest in safety, right? And I know there's been a lot of director of safeties, director of operations folks that are struggling with their leaders and their bosses to, move safety forward. And what I always say is that, look, I can give you, safety can actually save the company money. And folks, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, look, if you take a couple examples, like if you do safety right and you're investing in it, there's a reduction in the likelihood of you having an incident, and worse yet, a major accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can lead to potential lower insurance rates. And John just really highlighted that, high level, holistically across the industry that would potentially allow that, right? If everybody's doing their part. It can reduce legal costs. Think about it. Well, if an incident happens, a ground handling incident happens, that's going to be the blame game under the investigation. Attorneys are going to get involved. There's costs associated with that. And then worse yet, you can potentially decrease your downtime for maintenance repairs, right? So you think about loss of use, that ties into that. So my point is that, when you ask about the shift and the cultural shift, safety is now kind of a much more viewed as important in that process. And I say that because my comment earlier about SMS is going to be a big eye opener for many operators who just have been deferring implementing that program, right? And so, in my view, the SMS may be the new good housekeeping seal. And I say that because today it's the audit world, right? So we all know the audit programs that are out there, and a lot of operators like to have that logo on their respective website. But SMS is what we're discovering, especially in the Part 135 world. It's kind of a it's a competitive advantage by having an SMS program, and because what we're finding is that many charter brokers are now asking operators to see their SMS policies and their procedures as a prerequisite to doing business with them, right? So if you think about what the audit world has been doing, and I think they complement each other. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but the point is that SMS is now criteria to potentially do business, with others. So that's my cultural shift. I think we're seeing that safety is a much more valued, business tool than it historically has looked at in the past. That's all.
Yeah, I think, and I could add on to that I think having an effective safety culture and an SMS program, it's more than just preventing incidents and accidents, right? It changes the culture of your organization to make for happier employees. If you're on the ball when it comes to safety issues, you're more likely to be on the ball when it comes to accounting issues, customer service issues. It takes over the organization and makes everybody work more efficiently, and it's going to increase profits, right? It's going to help the organization holistically, more than just avoiding accidents. So once you start down the road of having that right culture, it's going to spread to other parts of the organization, and it's going to affect your business positively in other aspects, not just preventing accidents.
I fully agree with that because it will shift your mindset on everybody because it forces involvement and it forces investment into your organization, which will then boost morale. When people have bigger morale, they want to talk about things more because now they're proud of where they're working, they're proud of where they're at, and they want to see improvements and see that move along with everything. You guys mentioned cost, both of you, a few times already, and how things are changing these days. John, you've been in the insurance game since '97. So aviation was much different when you got into it as it is now. Everything's electronic now. It seems like everything on an aircraft breaks in 10 seconds. You mentioned the cost of litigation and everything is going up on the insurance side. What about on the front side of it with accidents and incidents? Are we seeing the claim amounts also skyrocketing? What are the numbers looking like in that range?
Yeah, so we are definitely seeing inflation of claims cost, and it's
Okay.
on every front. It's from the cost of parts. What we used to be able to fix a ding in the side of an airplane for $20,000. Now you've got to replace a whole panel or a whole composite piece of an airplane that can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions. There seems to be much more downtime. So when instead of pulling out a dent, you need to replace a whole panel or section. That airplane needs to be down for a while, and that's going to cost that customer money, or that's going to cost more shipping costs. There's going to be more things that will delay that claim the more complicated it gets. So labor costs have certainly gone up. Nothing in that equation has gotten cheaper in the 27 years that I have been in the business. What has been helpful, though, to some extent, is that there have been less large accidents. Right, the
Mm-hmm.
fatality rate has gone down, so that's been helpful. So a few less incidents certainly changes that equation, but the cost of each incident has gone up exponentially. So that's what we're looking at from an insurance industry. Looking at number of incidents on the downslope, but cost per incident is way
Mm-hmm.
on the upslope. And when you get into the liability issues, the cost of litigation, not sure if any of you know any lawyers, but none of their fees have gone down in my entire lifetime, and I don't anticipate they will. And just the general cost of litigation, the amounts that the plaintiff's bar will be asking for, demanding, all of that has gone up. And we're seeing it in the court awards. We see it in the settlements that are reached. They're all much, much larger than they were in the past. I shouldn't say all, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a trend of that number going up. So we're definitely faced with increased costs from every angle of adjusting a claim.
My goodness. Yeah, I saw the same thing. Now that I'm with a 135 operator, I'm seeing the exact same thing where you're not seeing the majors, but there's the minors because, and same thing when I was with a 145 because now with SMS and with hazard reporting, with an overall boost in your safety culture, you're looking for those little things. You're looking for the nicks in the paint. You're looking for the tiny dents, and you're looking for the small issues that maybe would have gotten glossed over 10, 15 years ago when your safety culture and your overall quality culture and your experience on the hangar floor might have been a little bit different. I know we're getting a little close on time here, so I wanted to start to close this out. But before I did, I wanted to give you both an opportunity. So, Bryan, what is on the horizon for ACSF right now? What do you guys got coming down the pipeline that's interesting for everybody?
Well, let me close by saying this: investing in safety and SMS, right, is nothing more than a business tool. And I and
Mm-hmm.
I say that because what it does, it helps protect your brand, your image, and your exposure to liability. I think that's people get kind of wrapped around the axle relative to SMS and the safety component versus a business tool. And if you kind of link those two together, um, I think the fact is that it's just the way you should be conducting your business day to day. And John said it earlier, it changes the whole culture of your operation in many other departments other than just safety itself. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, we will be hosting a series of safety webinars over the next several months. So stay tuned for more.
Absolutely. John, what about you? What's going on with the USAIG coming up?
So, USAIG, we're a 97-year-old company. We plan on being here for another 97. We've got a big anniversary coming up in a few years, but it's actually really exciting times to be in aviation, particularly aviation insurance. When I started 27 years ago, there wasn't lots of new stuff happening. There was a brief interlude with VLJs becoming a new thing that people were excited about. But in the last few years, we've got all sorts of unmanned activity. We've got commercial space launches. We've got people going into outer space. We have all sorts of new airplanes coming into the market. So it's a really, really exciting time for us. And we have always been at the forefront of ensuring new and innovative products in aviation. And we plan on continuing that. So we are excited about our jobs. I know it's probably surprising to be excited about insurance, but we are. We're definitely passionate about it, and we're passionate about aviation. Most of our employees are pilots, mechanics, so we're aviation people, and we're excited for the aviation industry, and we're excited to play our role in it going forward. So we're booming along with the aviation insurance industry. The general aviation industry and the aviation industry in general. And we're happy to be a part of keeping that going.
No, I love that. And from your perspective in insurance, you always need to be forward looking. So the education piece is extremely important. And Bryan, you're tossing out education coming up in some webinars. So I think to close us out, education in general is just what is extremely important for our industry right now. But I cannot thank you both enough for being on the program. Thank you guys so much for taking your time to be here and sharing your wonderful message with us. If this is your first time viewing this podcast, please like, share, subscribe, get the message out, because we want to take aviation safety even further. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Safety Wire Podcast.